Welcome, everybody. My name is Liz. This meeting is being recorded. Lamore is in the background, letting people in, monitoring the chat. And we are here to welcome and interview Louise Goldberg about her book. It's back here. Yoga Therapy for Children with Autism and Special Needs. We're still letting people in. Welcome, welcome. Woohoo. To formally get us started, before we hear from Louise herself, I would like to read her bio. Louise Goldberg is a certified yoga therapist, holds an MA in reading education, and is a massage therapist, specializing in cranial sacral therapy. She's the founder of Creative Relaxation and Relaxation Now Corporation, and she is education director for the Yoga Center of Deerfield Beach in Florida. She has been a reading consultant and has taught English at the middle school, high school, and college levels. And she's the author of Classroom Yoga Breaks, Brief Exercises to Create Calm and Yoga Therapy for Children with Autism and Special Needs, also available in Polish, and co-author of Stop and Relax, Your Special Needs Toolbox, also available in Spanish. Louise began her yoga journey spending summers living and learning at the Shivananda Vedanta Yoga Centers in Valmore in Quebec and Europe from 1979 to 1984. She was certified at the Quebec Ashram in 1981. Since that time, she has taught yoga to neurodivergent youth, pre-K to young adults in hospitals, schools, and camps, and has been training teachers and therapists in the implementation of yoga-based strategies. In 2000, she began collaboration with autism educators, creating yoga-based visual curricula. She is currently a consultant with the Dan Marino Foundation, leading yoga and meditation classes for young adults. She leads retreats and teacher trainings internationally. Louise believes that children are natural yogis and that yoga is an ideal medium for supporting play, reinforcing boundaries, promoting self-regulation, elevating self-esteem, and feeling loved. And I hope you all feel that today, and give a warm welcome to Louise. Hello, hello.
Thank you very much, Liz, and thank you, Lamore. Really appreciate your support.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you to Shawnee and to Rachel for all the work they've done to create this collaboration of women writers specializing in yoga therapy. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm trying to remain calm. So I'm going to start us off with a practice that I have in my book, Yoga Therapy for Children with Autism and Special Needs. It's called Chest Opening Seated Flow, and it's something that's designed to help us calm down. So we're going to start off with hands together. I'm going to back up a little so you can see me, with tree hands. So I specifically call this tree hands instead of prayer hands because I work in a lot of schools. So you'll notice that a lot of the languaging that I use is secular. So we'll start off with tree hands, just hands at the heart to ground ourselves. And then we'll do some tree breathing by slowly elevating the hands, watching your fingers as they go up, and watching your fingers as they come down. Hands come up, hands come down. And now we'll incorporate the breath. Breathe in as your hands come up. Breathe out as your hands come down. Now I'm doing it slowly because you're grown-ups, but with kids, we do a faster pace. Breathe in, hands come up. Breathe out, hands come down. One more time. Breathe in, hands come up. Breathe out, hands come down. We'll float our arms up and we'll become a half moon as we lean to one side, and then a half moon as we lean to the other side. So slowly floating from side to side. one more time on each side. And then we'll do our half fish pose, bringing your hands behind your back. If you have a chair, you can rest your hands on your chair. You can let them dangle overhead and just lift your heart toward the heavens and take a nice deep breath. From here, we'll do our folded leaf. We'll just gently begin to fold forward. I will go away as I lean forward, but just go down if you want with your chest on your thighs or just slightly above. You can use your hands as a brace if you don't want to go all the way down. It might not be appropriate for you to let your head hang. We can talk about that in a few minutes. Just folding in two and letting your body rest. With your next inhalation, we'll slowly creep ourselves up. Use your hands to lift you up. And now we'll be a pretzel. We'll twist around to one side, wrapping our arms around our bodies. And then ever so slowly over to the other side in a pretzel. Once more to each side, just a gentle twist. Good. If I were doing this with the kids, I'd ask them what kind of pretzel they like. And if they like salt on their pretzel, let's get a little extra salt. And now we'll twist a little more quickly. So arms out to the sides, we'll just twist and twist and twist and twist and twist. You can make it faster, twist and twist and twist and twist and twist and twist, and the more slowly twist and twist and twist and twist, and so slowly twist and twist back to center, hands to the heart. And once again, we'll do our tree breathing. Hands come up. Hands come down. Breathe in. Breathe out. Hands to the heart. And now we'll do some butterfly hands. So let your hands fly like butterflies. Let them fly all around. Let them fly high and let them fly low. Let them fly high and let them fly low. One front, one back. Other one front, other one back. One high, one low. Other one high, one low. Let your butterflies fly all around, all around, all around. And now take your butterflies and let them rest. So they would be resting on your lap. I'm making mine high so you can see. Can't really see my lap. And then we'll look at the butterfly in one hand. Slowly turn to look at the butterfly in the other hand. Look at the butterfly in one hand. And now the butterfly in the other hand. Now fly your butterflies. Let them fly, let them fly, let them fly, let them fly. Slowly bring your butterflies to rest. So that's a combination of chest opening, seated flow, and butterfly hands. I use butterfly hands a lot with kids because it's fun and because we can go from being very active and very silly, and we learn a lot about directions, high and low and front and back. And also then we have an opportunity to be still. But I don't expect them to be still for very long. So that's why in between we quickly go back to flying butterfly hands.
Perfect. You have so much experience, Louise. It just shows, and I feel like a little kid again. Tell us, why did you write this book?
Well, it was quite a shock to me when I think it was 2011, I got a email from someone who claimed to be an editor from W.W. Norton, asking me if I was interested in writing a book. And actually what she asked me if I wanted to expand on the principles of creative relaxation. And of course, I was dubious because all the Norton authors that I had ever read were all PhDs and mostly college professors. And so I looked, checked to see if it was legitimate. And then when I found out it really was somebody from Norton, I asked her if she was sure that she had the right person. And she explained that they were trying to move into more alternative therapies because she was in the psychology That was the books, the department that she was the editor of. So that's how it came to be. And interestingly, especially for those who are yoga therapists or followers of the International Association of Yoga Therapy, she found me by an article that I had published in 2004 in the International Journal of Yoga Therapists. And it described my work with, I think I called it exceptional and regular ed using yoga. And so it was quite remarkable that an article from 2004 brought her to me in 2011 to write this book, which was published in 2013, which I know is ancient history, but so and so that's how the book came about, and no one would have been more surprised than I. And then after the first book, she asked me to write the second book too. So, but then I told her no more books.
Perfect. Well, what are you doing now with the book? Mhm.
Well, before I'd been leading trainings in yoga for special needs back, and I know, I want to make a note about that, about the language, the vernacular related to this community. I know that neurodivergent is a much more contemporary term. And back then, there was the big debate about special needs and special ed. And there was a huge stigma around special ed. And so as I mentioned, the article in 2004 was regular ed and exceptional ed, because that exceptional was a more acceptable term. So I've sort of, I've been fascinated to watch the change and the languaging, and to definitely feel like it's almost head spinning to try to keep up with it. But I believe that the sentiment, that um, the message is the same, even if the names are changing. So I started training teachers back in probably I don't know. I've been doing this since 82 is when I started working with kids with special needs back in a school for exceptional ed. It was actually a hospital. And then at some point, I was hired by the schools to do these trainings. And then when that funding dried up, I developed my own training. So I created a couple of, level 1, level 2, and I had a manual. So I used those manuals and then created them into the book. But now mostly I either do trainings or I lead retreats. I have a lot of my friends here who have come on retreats with me. And also I teach at the Yoga Center of Deerfield Beach, where I'm the director of education, lead teacher trainings. And also as a yoga therapist, I help people develop home practices.
Perfect. Yeah. When I was reading this book and reading the language, I found it as a yoga therapist that it's suited for everybody. We could replace the word child with human throughout the book, and that anytime you talked about someone with a sensitivity, in my world of working with people with chronic pain, they have sensitive nervous systems as well. And so, even though you wrote this book for children, it's so useful also for adults, and as well as anyone with a sensitive nervous system, which I would say might be all of us.
My friend Steve Templin is here, and he has a whole program about sensitive. I think it's specifically men. So yeah, so there's a lot of sensitive people out there, and that's, I guess, one of the reasons why I think that this work, the working with children, and then especially children who are neurodivergent, why yoga people are so suited for it, because of our level of sensitivity, because of our ability to observe the subtle. Because a lot of times with kids, there might be something that would be easily missed in terms of their ability to connect with us. You might have a child who appears to be completely absent, and yet at some moment you'll see a little flicker. Well, someone might not notice that flicker, but a person who's accustomed to dealing in the subtleties of our being will notice that. And that is a clear indication that there's, a communication, that there's a response, that we've perhaps, sparked something. And so now we have something to build on. So that's why I think that yoga people, and also the fact that we're so attuned to, nonverbal language. We use the bodies, we read bodies, we feel our own body. And so that also helps us. I have an interesting example of that. When I was teaching for many years, I taught at either camps through the Dan Marino. Let's see, now I'm with the foundation. It was back then the Dan Marino Center. And then before that at a hospital for individuals with children with extraordinary challenges, including autism. And one time I over the years, because I've trained so many teachers and local teachers have been able to come follow me and assist me when I've been teaching. My friend Tina is here, who worked with me for a long time in that regard. And there was a young man who was a new yoga teacher, and he was exuberant. And it was a wonderful thing because we didn't have a lot of men teachers. And so it was great. And so many of our population are boys or young men.
Yeah, whoops. Would you like me to close the door so you won't hear this as much?
I'm going to mute that. Got it. Go on, sorry.
Yes, we would love you to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, he came into a group of kids, and many of the boys were really excited about having this young man that they could sit next to, and they could, who would model, that they would follow. But his energy was very, it was great, in that it was, he was a force. And this is a good thing. And so most of the kids really responded, but there was another little boy who was a child in my class, who was extremely sensitive and withdrawn. And when this energetic force came close to him, it repelled, he closed down even more. And so it was a great opportunity for me to work with this young teacher to remind him that sometimes being an energetic person is wonderful, but there are also times we have to kind of tone it down so that we can match the energy that's presented to us. And as a yogi, of course, he could relate to that. Where this is a very subtle thing that people who, unless they either work with this community or have a lot of experience, might not get.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about how that doesn't happen overnight. And another example of with Renzo, a student that you have permission to talk about.
Thank you. So I told Liz, in case I drew a blank, that she should just cue me about things we talked about before. So thank you. So yeah, I had a wonderful young student named Renzo. I met him when he was in third grade, and he was in an autism cluster at a school in Coconut Creek, Florida. And I just want to mention that, well, I'll wait and tell you the punchline later, but Renzo was very anxious about time. He was always checking his watch and very preoccupied about how many seconds something took, and to the point where it was extremely distracting, and it took him off task a great deal of the time. And one day, so we started the yoga program at the school with just a small number of children. It was I was very fortunate. This was in 2000. I was very fortunate to be working with two autism educators and a school psychologist, and we later collaborated on this visual curriculum called Stop and Relax. And Renzo his mother would take him to the bus stop, and then when the bus came, he would get on the bus. And when the bus was late, he would become extremely anxious. So one day they were at the bus stop, and the bus was very late, and he was in the back seat of the car, and his mother looked back, and she expected him to be extremely agitated, but he was lying down. She said to him, "Renzo, are you sick?" He said, "No." She said, "Are you sleeping?" He said, "No." She said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "I am relaxing." So
Perfect.
it was very heartening to see that he had been able to generalize that skill from his yoga lessons.
Absolutely.
Oh, and I
Absolutely.
should just mention that now Renzo is successful. He's a realtor and he's just gotten married.
Fantastic.
He's living a wonderful life.
Yeah, well, tell us about the sandwich approach and how that worked with him.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things that I've found working with this population is that it's really important for consistency. And I don't think that's unique to a neurodivergent youth. I think it's pretty common among many people, especially children, to like consistency, to feel better with familiarity. So the and such to such an extent that very often when we diverge from a set plan, it creates great, anxiety. And so when teaching yoga, one of the things that I do is I do create a consistent lesson. And obviously at first it's new, but after a while it becomes familiar. And but in order to still keep it interesting, I try to include something different at least, at various points in the lesson. And so I use what my friend Deborah Collins called the sandwich approach, which was to layer something familiar, something new, something familiar, so that it eased the anxiety of something new. And I had a student for many years who she was a young adult, and she was very attached to the routine. And I'm like, I understand that and I appreciate and value it, but I'm not much of a routine person. So that's one of the reasons I use the visual curriculum, because it keeps me on a routine. Is when I teach ordinarily, I don't ever think I do anything the same way twice. And not only was she used to the routine that I used with my visual cues, which was a flip chart of visual cues, but she also had a video that I had created, which her family used at home. And so she knew it by heart. And so when I would teach, sometimes she would say to me, well, you're doing it wrong, because I would not say exactly what was on the video, which she knew much better than I did. And so I had to develop a technique where at the end of the lesson, I gave the kids a chance to go back. And if there's something that I did differently that they wanted me to do, not the way they wanted it, that they would have the chance to then share it the right way. Yeah.
That's perfect. Go ahead. You use the visual cues too, and you have lots of good tips. You always have something nice to say, but you don't want to overdo it. Tell us about that.
Right. So I would say that when teaching children, and I think this is true for all children, and probably for all people, that it's really important to find something positive to say. And that sometimes it's really difficult, because sometimes we have kids, especially for whom even the most simple thing would seem simple to us is extremely challenging. And so finding opportunities to reward, to acknowledge appropriate behavior, what I consider to be appropriate in terms of the rules, and I can talk about the rules in a second, is really, so I just saw somebody asking a question and I got all distracted. What was I saying?
About the tools. You always have something
Okay.
nice to say.
Finding something positive to say. So when I'm teaching kids, I'm like really busy because I'm watching them, of course. You can never, I might close my eyes when I'm teaching an adults, but with teaching children, I'd never close my eyes because I never know what's going to happen in 1 second. So watching them and also responding to them. The the If I see a child who is having a great deal of difficulty with my most basic rule, which is to stay on your own mat, and that kid is running around, believe me, I have plenty of times where the kids are running around the room and it doesn't look like there's anything, they're just handling control. But I see that kid step on his mat for one moment, and at that moment, I'm like, nice job getting on your mat. And I have to get it out really fast because he might be gone in a second. And then the next time, again, I see him step on his mat, maybe then I can say, I like the way you're on your mat. And so finding something positive. I might have a child who is sitting in the room and has his back turned to me, or is, completely detached from everything that's going on, but I can acknowledge that that child is sitting quietly. I really like the way Johnny is sitting quietly on his mat. So finding something, not just something, it must be true, it must be real. And ideally using the child's name when you acknowledge something that they're doing, it can be very, very effective. And also, as much as possible, ignoring the behaviors that you find disruptive. I know it's very difficult, but as much as possible, ignoring those behaviors and acknowledging those behaviors that, in fact, are consistent with what your rules are. So I use rules, and I know people say kids don't like rules, but I have found that kids actually appreciate rules because rules make it clear what the expectations are for them. And my rules are very simple. Stay on your own mat, keep your hands and feet to yourself. Sometimes I include other rules like being quiet or listening to the teacher, focusing on breathing. But those are more sophisticated. I might just start off with those first two. And you think about that. If I have a rule that says stay on your own mat, then every time a child is on his mat or her mat, then I can acknowledge that. And if they're not on their mat, I don't have to say to them, oh, you're not doing, I don't like this, don't do that. I simply say, remember the rule, stay on your own mat. So it takes the punitive quality out of correction, and it makes it more of just, these are the rules. And when you follow those rules, I can acknowledge that. When you don't, I remind you of those rules.
Perfect. That goes along with the golden rules, which is like your lack of expectation. Yeah. Did you want to talk about those?
Oh, yeah, I can talk about the golden rules. I just printed them out for myself.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
was telling Lemore and Liz that I've been rereading my book, and I've actually been enjoying it very much.
Congrats.
I'd forgotten about so much. Even though I teach the trainings and use the book as the curriculum, there's only certain areas of it that you can teach in a 15-hour or 30-hour training. And so anyway, and I should probably mention that those trainings are CEUs for yoga therapists. But rereading it, I'm remembering so many things that I've learned from other teachers and from the children, and so it's been a lot of fun. But so my 10 golden rules are sort of I guess the heart of my teaching. And the first one of those is to see the whole child. Because when you're working with children who have lots of diagnoses or lots of challenges that have been the focus of most people's attention on them, it's really important to see them as the being that they are. And what I'm always reminded of when I talk about this is my first time that I went to the yoga ashram, the Shivananda ashram in Valmorin, Quebec. And I wrote a letter asking them if I could come as a karma yogi, which meant that I would trade my services for being able to stay there. I would offer work. And I received a letter back, and the salutation of the letter was, "Blessed immortal soul."
Mm.
Blessed immortal soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I still get choked up when I think about what that was like to receive a message that addressed me as a blessed immortal soul.
Mm-hmm.
It's very new to yoga. And I feel like that is what I want to see in every child, in every human, that blessed immortal soul, that it's not somebody with autism or with ADHD or with executive functioning challenges or with sensory processing issues. Underneath all that is this universal blessed immortal soul. And that when I address a child and I recognize that in them, whether they can communicate with me in a classic way, in an oral, verbal way, or whether they communicate with me by telling me to leave them alone, I can still come back to that. And that is, I think, the essence of, dealing with kids. There are so many ways that kids are categorized. When I was in graduate school, I became a reading specialist. I had this wonderful professor, and she talked about the importance of non-labeling. And even though I know that it's really important to understand the challenges of individuals so that we can address them appropriately, I mean, I think that's really important. There's lots of research in my book and many other books about that are, it's truly apt. But sometimes a label becomes it becomes a divider instead of a unifier. So finding ways to find the essence of the person, regardless of what their various challenges are, really important. And do you want me to talk more about the golden rules? Should I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, so another one that's really important to me is to maintain your enthusiasm. And so, because when you work with kids, I have found that you can't phone it in. You know,
Mhm.
you can't just sort of be there. There's nothing more demanding to in all the play I've taught for, I guess I realized it this morning, 48 years I've been teaching. It's crazy. Well, maybe not, maybe 46. Yeah, I've been practicing 46 teaching yoga, and I've been a teacher since 1972. So I'm old, and I've been doing this for a long time.
Experienced.
Experienced, very experienced. So, but I think though that enthusiasm, you have to be able to bring that every single day. And one of the things that I really counsel teachers that I work with, that if you are feeling just drained and you can't bring it, then you need to back off. You need to revise your schedule. You need to rethink how you spend your time. And there are other things that you can do without that intensity. But working with kids really does require your full presence. I give an example about when I was an English teacher, and I used to be able to show a movie every now and then. And so back then we actually had film strips. People might remember those. They were always burning up. But anyway, now we would just stick in a video. Or anyway, so I would be able to watch a movie every now and then. I had 5 classes, and so I might be able to show that movie in every single class. So the first class, when the movie was being presented, I would be full of, curiosity and interest as I was watching it. And then the second class would come up, and I'd already seen it. And so I'd think, well, maybe I could get a little work done during that class. But I looked around and I realized that when I was, if I was doing work, then I was reflecting to the children that this wasn't that interesting. And so as a result, they were also finding other things to do besides watch the movie. So every single time that movie played, I had to act like it was brand new, the most interesting thing I'd ever seen. And that was a lot of work. And so, but otherwise, the kids would mirror, my response. So having enthusiasm, honest, sincere enthusiasm, loving what you do, believing in the ability of the children to learn, trusting in the fact that, not every day is going to be great. Some days are going to be really hard, maybe even awful, but still you're there because that blessed immortal soul deserves no less.
Mhm. Yes, with children and with anyone that's on our mat and in our care.
Absolutely, Liz.
Mhm. Were there more you wanted to
Well,
talk
I'll
about?
do one more,
Mhm.
and that's plan to be surprised.
Mm.
Not the only thing you can plan on with kids is that it's never going to be the same, and that you never know. Like, and also I have another one about take nothing personally, and I think this is really important. And I think this is another thing about yogis is that we're, usually a little more able to let things roll off our backs. So teaching in schools and camps and all kinds of environments, and with the same children. But some days I would walk in. Usually it would be once a week that I would see these kids. Some days I would walk in, and kids would see me and they go, "Oh, I love yoga, Miss Louise. I'm so happy you're here." And then someone else would say, I hate yoga. Oh no. So, so imagine if you were, influenced by that and you'd fall apart every time a kid said that they didn't like something. It would be really troublesome. And also especially because I think that the community that I work with so much, those who would be considered neurodivergent or autistic, don't have a lot of filters sometimes, which is a beautiful thing because they're honest, they're true, but also that means they're not going to be thinking about your feelings. And of course, that's not their job. They're not supposed to be thinking about your feelings, but they will be very quick to point out to you if you have a pimple on your chin, or you have wet under your armpits. They're gonna ask you about that. I say, why is your hair sticking up like that? So these are the kinds of things that you just have to accept that they are observations that they make, and that it's not anything that you want to get too caught up in.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Well, when you were writing this book, we talked a little bit in the past about some things that surprised you about the process in writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I discovered I was an incredible procrastinator.
Yes,
I
but
thought,
you
I
also
thought,
you found a wonderful relationship. You reached out to Stephen Porges and talked to him, and he really helped you out. Huh?
yeah, yeah. So that was one of the wonderful things about writing the book is I found how generous educators were. I reached out to many educators and researchers. And I was, I mean, these people are busy. And I was just so gratified and appreciative of the time they took. Stephen Porges, Roger Cole, people who were doing research. I learned a lot from someone who's here today, Joanne Spence. Um, there was a whole community of people out there who were incredibly generous with their time and their knowledge. uh, Dr. Stephen Porges. I know now there's, this concern about the polyvagal theory, but I read something so wonderful today by, oh, I should know her. She's a yoga therapist, and she is a professor, and I don't know why her name is just slipping away from me. I think she's a member of this group.
Elisa
Might it be Amy Wheeler?
It was
or
Amy
Amy?
Wheeler.
Mhm.
Thank you, Lamore. Did you read that today? She wrote, I'm not sure when she wrote it, about, the fact that the yoga's roots are so deep, that, the changes and not just changes, but the process of query is really important. It's part of us. Swadhyaya, self-study, and that whole process of continually learning, but that our roots are so deep that the essence of yoga is unchanged. And so anyway, that's a whole other story. But Dr. Porges was very generous with me, and I told Liz that when I went on LinkedIn, because as a Norton author, I was supposed to do Twitter, and I was supposed to do LinkedIn and all those things, which I don't pay any attention to. I have to be honest. But I joined LinkedIn, and then one day I got a thing that Dr. Porges was like joining my LinkedIn community or inviting me to be a part of his LinkedIn community. And I was so excited. I told my friend Steve Templin, I tried to explain it to my husband. I said, it's like Ringo Starr asked you to be. That's how I felt. But it was just, yeah. So anyway, I'm very appreciative of him. So anyone who doesn't know about his work with the polyvagal theory, it's been extremely helpful to me in understanding this community, because whether or not, leaving aside all of the controversy about that, the the concept, the fact that the vagus nerve, the cranial nerve number 10, which starts at the base of the skull and travels through all of these areas, which are crucial to communication and self-soothing, that the research that he shared showed that individuals on the autism spectrum tended to have a dysregulated vagus nerve, which means that they did not have the same tools accessible to them for self-soothing. And this would make perfect sense. And this would explain why some of the things that kids on the spectrum would intuitively do, like rocking, spinning, hugging, things that would evoke calm. And so also the fact that many times individuals on the spectrum may not respond to nonverbal cues as well as verbal cues, but subtleties like facial expressions. The ability to just turn your head in the direction of someone's voice is, as my understanding goes, is regulated by the vagus nerve. The ability to distinguish between outside sound and the sound that's right here that you want to be attended to. So that somebody asked us just then about should they close the door to shut out the noise of something. Well, that would be a technique, that would be a tool that's regulated by the vagus nerve. The rate of the heart, the rate of respiration, digestion, these are all classic challenges for many neurodivergent youth. And these all appear to be involved, regulated to a certain extent by the vagus nerve. So it gave me great understanding and also validation for the yoga practices that we use with kids: rocking, hugging, soothing. Same thing with Roger Cole. He talks about the importance of pressure around the ocular, the area of the surrounding the eyes. Well, a pressure like an eye bag, or the pressure that comes when you come into a pose like child's pose, that promotes soothing, that prepares a body for sleep. And so why would child's pose be a calming pose? And you have the work of somebody like A.J. Ayers, who sort of changed the nature of occupational therapy. And she talked about the importance of flexion to evoke calm. And then weighted flexion. Well, you put your body into a child's pose, you've got the weight of your body, you've got flexion of all of these joints, you've got the pressure along the frontal area, the ocular area, you've got the chin tucked in, which activates the baroreceptors, that tends to lower the blood pressure. So all of those things bring about a calming effect. And the more one understands that, the more you can apply it. I remember coming into a camp class one day, and the counselor said to me, well, good luck. They're all crazy today. I haven't been able to do anything. So good luck to you teaching them yoga. And of course, that was like, okay, I'm ready for this challenge. I know a lot of things that will soothe kids. And so we do a pose called seesaw, which is, holding hands, rocking back and forth. Well, you've got the pulling, the pushing, all of these sensory processing things. You've got the rocking, which tends to soothe and calm. You've got the singing. So they're breathing if they're singing, seesaw, back and forth we go. So you put all that together and you create an opportunity for calm. And so when I did that class, every other pose was seesaw. And that was fine. It didn't hurt anybody. It just, we did something challenging and then we did seesaw. So they came right back to that calming place. We did lots of I call the child's pose baby poses. So that yoga is perfectly designed for bringing about calm. You might have a group of kids that are so hyper, they couldn't possibly sit still. Well, so we do tons and tons of butterfly hands. We jump around and shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. So, we can adapt the posture. We can take the same posture. Butterfly hand could be very slow and meditative, or it could be very fast and exciting. So we can create a sequence for children based on what they need at that moment. And that comes back to, our very important thing about engaging a child by meeting them where they are. And I know that this is a very common thing now, and I'm so happy that so many people recognize the importance of that. But when I first started my yoga training back in 78, and when I went to the yoga ashram in 79, and one of the principles of the Shivananda approach was to meet a person where they are. Some people come to yoga through because exercise, they want to change their dress size. Some people come through meditation. Some people come through diet. There's a big, all the thing about how you cut your food. I forgot what you call that, but you know what I mean? Yeah, somebody knows. That was, yeah. Um, it doesn't matter how you come, which door you come to, but when you come in, you are welcomed. The paths are many, the way is one. So,
Louise, you have so much experience. How did you choose which tools to put in your book?
well, when I started teaching, my friend Carol Goya and I started teaching at the school, the hospital. It was called South Florida State Hospital. It was a residential facility for children who, you know, well, who couldn't stay at home. And so they needed a great deal of care. And we went in there, essentially blind. I mean, we had no idea. I had never even heard the word autism at that point. Even though I was an educator, I was an English teacher and then a reading specialist, but I'd never heard the word autism. And so we went in there and we just tried things. And if they worked, we used them. And if they didn't work, we threw them out and tried something else. And so that was where I was. And we sometimes we would look at each other like, what, we had kids literally wrapped around us. And we would look at each other and go, what are we doing? But then sometimes there'd just be this little moment of quiet, and we realized that it was working. And it was just such a gift that we thought, okay, there's something to this. It's worth hanging in there. And so that's where we started. And so for me, what I wanted to be able to share with other people were the tools that had been successful, that had worked for me, also with the caveat that there's no guarantee they're going to work, next time or with the child you're working with.
For sure. Um, Tell us the number one thing that gets misrepresented about this subject. Something about the story about how Norton, they offered you something initially and
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, Liz is doing a
mhm.
great job reminding me of the things I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so the cover of my book. So I have a beautiful, I think I have my
Here, I
book.
have it. It's right
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So I have to say, now, isn't that sweet, that cover? That's the cover of my book. So Norton, when they told me, I mean, here you are pouring out your heart, your life, your blood, sweat, and tears into writing this book. And then they send me a picture of a cover that they recommend. And it has first of all, it's got these big black letters across the whole thing. Yoga, therapy, for. I mean, I have a very hard time with these big black bold letters. And the child that they have depicted is headless. They have a
Oh,
headless child sitting in a cross-legged position with sneakers on.
oh dear.
So I'm like, this is wrong in so many ways. But it made me so sad to think that they somehow envision children with exceptional needs as not having an identity. And so that was heartbreaking to me. And also, not to mention the fact that I did not want that hideous cover for my book. And so I got together with my wonderful photographer, Ed Zeiss, and my husband, Rich Voss, and other friends who were available to me, and sent them some photos. Which ones do you think is the best? And then I sent it. And then my friend Karen Deerwester, who'd published many books, told me, tell them what colors you want. What, you want color around the edge. You want it to be white. You want it to be bright. Because to me, this is a thrilling topic. It shouldn't be something that's like people are afraid to talk about. And plus, there's something else we talked about. That's that quotation from, I think it's a Dr. Stephen, is it Shore, who said, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's a huge spectrum, and there are people who are extraordinary, on all ends, and people whose talents and abilities are so divergent that it's not anything that is a one size fits all. So I think that giving people the opportunity to learn more about this community and many of the wonderful things about them was something that was very important to me.
Mhm.
I wanted to say one other thing, Liz, and that was about
Yeah.
the journalist who wanted to do a story. So
Yes,
this was back
perfect.
in around 2000. I was working with this group of autism educators, and I mentioned this little boy Renzo, and during the year that we were working with him, he was moved out of the autism cluster into a support program where he just was in regular ed and just a little bit of support. And his mother was very excited about it, and she really attributed his progress to his work with yoga. And so there was a journalist who wanted to write a story about it. She wanted to feature the story about yoga helping Renzo, overcome many of the challenges that he had. And his mother was attributing, his work with yoga with our group to the fact that he had made so much progress in his educational plan. And so she wanted to write the story that yoga will help this kid who was considered autistic to sort of change the definition of who he was. And I was like, no way, you cannot. I mean, that would be so horrible for people to think all the kid has to do is take yoga, and now he's not going to need to be in an autism cluster anymore, that he's going to suddenly be propelled into a more typical ed. Because, parents of kids with exceptional challenges, with neurodivergences, their life is really hard, and they spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy trying to find ways to help those kids. And to suggest that there's one thing that's going to change it for them would be devastating. I mean, because first of all, it's not true. And secondly, it's just a false promise. And I could not be a part of that. And the journalist was very upset with me because she thought this was a fabulous story. And it is. I mean, I'm happy to share it with you, but that's one kid. And I'm sure that there are many, many others who have been helped by yoga, but there is no magic pill. And I think it would be a terrible disservice to any family to suggest that any one thing is going to change their child. So she did do the story. She was really mad at me. So she, put me at the end of the story, but that was okay. But she had lots of great pictures of the kids, and it was a way for people to recognize the value of yoga in a program like that. So being authentic, Satya, I think that's really, really important for us.
Absolutely. Holding true to our ethics, and
Hmm.
values. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that would be false advertising. Hmm.
Absolutely. Yep.
Hmm. Well, let's see. Tell us more about what did we miss? I'll go back to my notes. We've
We
lovely gone
we
through.
talked a lot. I think maybe one other thing, I think you asked me about a place where I hadn't expected this book to be of value,
Mhm.
a surprise. And one time I was at a conference. It was I think the Kripalu Yoga in Schools conference, and there was a college professor there who told me that she used one of the lessons in the book. It's I think it's called a calming lesson. I have short ones like the one we did at the beginning, and I have longer ones. She said she used one of those with the students in her class, and it had made such a difference. And that was, adults. So I was very excited about that. And let's see, there was one other thing. Just think too. There's one other thing.
Let's see. That was she
Let
was
me
an
check
attorney.
my
You said,
notes.
yeah, that was
I, oh
something about
yeah.
the writing process.
Oh
Let's
no,
see.
I wanted to also mention about it's a wonderful community. So when I first started teaching, I yoga, especially to this very very complex community, I felt, as I said, I felt very alone. I didn't have really, I mean, I know there were kids yoga books, but there wasn't anything out there that helped me to do what I wanted to do. And that was one of the reasons that motivated me to write the book. But also by writing the book, I sort of, entered the scene, the kids yoga scene, and I met this fabulous community of educators, many of whom I still feel very connected to and very grateful to. And it was just wonderful. I mean, by doing presentations at places like Learning in the Brain conferences and the CTAR conferences and the National Kids Yoga conferences and the one I already mentioned, the one at Kripalu. It brought us all together, and it really helped me see that not only was I not alone, but there were so many people who had done so much more than I had done that I could learn from and share with. So that was very exciting. Just like being a part of this community has been very wonderful, this women's collective. Thanks to Rachel and Shawnee for putting that together. It also makes me realize how many of us are out there who want to learn from each other, who want to support each other. And I think that that's the thing. I think the commonality in teaching yoga, especially to children, I'd say the most important thing is to be loving, to be able to show that you are that you see the value in every child, that you believe in every child, that you have have hope for every child. I think that this is a wonderful thing, and being a part of a community who lives and breathes that has been very, very supportive and encouraging.
Oh, you embody it. And you also told me that before you found this community, you felt very alone in the writing process, but you also called upon the Bhagavad Gita, and you had that phrase, follow me, in your mind. And that really inspired you to find us and to write the book. You want to talk
That
a little bit more about that?
just, I guess that, from the Bhagavad Gita, one of my very favorite quotations in chapter 2 is that no effort is wasted. So that no matter what we're doing, as long as we're doing it from the heart, with sincerity, that no good work ever comes to harm. And
Perfect. Let's see. I think with that, we will end the hour and end the recording, but stick around for the chat and we'll keep talking and answer your questions. Go ahead and put your questions in the chat. And thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having us. And thank you, Louise.